So a lot of people are wondering whether or not the U.S. should join Israel in its strike on Iran. First of all, let me say that I am not a pro-war person. I wish that the world could live at peace, that no deaths would come because of the greed or stupidity of a government. Nevertheless, one has to note the fact that Iran, through its proxies, has been attacking Israel, funding Hezbollah, forming Hezbollah, and the Houthis in Yemen, as well as, of course, Hamas on the Gazan Strip. And they have fomented massive amounts of violence around the world. They killed 200-something Marines in Lebanon of the United States in the 1980s. They've sponsored terror attacks against Jews in Argentina. This is not a good regime, and the people that are living under them do not exactly live free. Women, for example, are forced to wear the hijab. If they don't, then they can be arrested, beaten, fined. If a woman under Sharia law, and I heard this on Piers Morgan the other day, gets raped, then she needs 3 male witnesses to confer and validate the fact that another male raped her. And if she does not have this, if she cannot produce it, the female could be executed, or she could purify herself and by marrying the alleged rapist. So this is the type of rule that the Iranian people live under that they didn't prior to the mullahs taking over in 1979. This is an evil, despotic regime that knows one thing: how to suppress their population. And that said, even with that, I'm not sure that I'm for war. I'm not for the United States to get involved, but you have to think practically. And at this point, there's a term in the movie industry of getting somebody pregnant. And what that means is that they've invested money, time, and emotional content into your project, and therefore they're more likely to shepherd it through. So you want to get people pregnant in some way. And Israel has successfully gotten the US and Donald Trump pregnant in this by unleashing the attacks that they have, by taking Iran by surprise, and what is acknowledged to be amazing work with their intelligence agencies and achieving a similar strategy that the Ukrainians did when they took out some of Russia's nuclear bombers. They have done similar in Iran in terms of getting rid of their weapons depots so that they have fewer missiles to fire and destroy, and knowing where the generals are, etc. And the problem that I see going forward for the future, thinking practically, is if you leave this wounded, evil animal there, struggling to survive, then the moment that they can, if they negotiate their way out of this, they are going to unleash a terrorist attack in the form of revenge. They will lie themselves back to the negotiating table. They will make a deal, and then they will lash out when they have that ability. And I don't think that Israel is going to allow it. Therefore, Israel is bent on regime change in Iran. I don't think that there's any doubt about it. And obviously, we would all hope that it comes from the ground up and that the Iranians are successfully able to depose the regime. The challenge is that this hasn't worked wherever we have tried it. If you take a look at Iraq, that we were lied into by George W. Bush and the neocons, that turned into a horrendous quagmire where before Iraq was a buffer for Iran, now Iran essentially owns Iraq as a proxy. It's no longer a completely independent country that was a buffer for the rest of the Middle East, and they've gained influence. If you take a look at Libya under Muammar Gaddafi, it was a functional state, and today they have open-air slave markets there, selling people from sub-Saharan Africa, which I find disgusting. There is massive amounts of tribal warfare going on. If you take a look at Syria and Bashar Assad, I was there at the end of 2010, shortly before everything blew up. And yes, it was an imperfect country. People were scared of the Mukhabarat. You dare mention Mukhabarat and you can see the chills over the people. And in case you don't know, that is the secret service that served Bashar Assad and helped him keep his tyrannical control over the population. But there was security. You were safe to wander around Syria. And even me, as a foreigner in the middle of the desert, felt relatively safe, although, there were a couple of incidences. One time, somebody pointed a gun in our general direction and started firing at the sky. He was drunk. But nevertheless, there was a form of safety and security that people, this is their number one need that they try to meet. If you take away security, then people go crazy. And now, today in Syria, you have a former ISIS member, somebody that had a $10 million U.S. bounty on his head that is somehow leading the state, an Al-Qaeda member. I don't think that this is an upgrade. And I do believe that Netanyahu lied to us about Iraq, that this was something that Israel wanted for its survival, but it didn't necessarily benefit the United States to rid of us of Saddam, to rid us of Bashir Assad. And yes, Iran absolutely did fund and develop October 7th, and they are responsible for many of the deaths around the Middle East. But the problem that I see for America is the fact that we have been impregnated by Israel, and that we have almost no choice but to aid and assist them. And that is not something that I would desire. Unfortunately, that is the machinations of the Israeli government, that they managed to do this. And for themselves, I understand the desire and need to attack Iran, because it's existential for them. Because if Iran were to, in fact, get a nuclear bomb, that would be the end of Israel. Former president of Iran stated that Israel is a one-bomb state. They have every intention of destroying Israel, that they consider to be the little Satan. And this is an ideology that cannot be allowed to attain a nuclear weapon. But I don't know for sure whether or not they were on the verge of getting it. I happen to trust Donald Trump a lot more than I did George W. Bush. He gave Iran a lot of time, 60 days, in order to negotiate. He advised them to take an agreement. They didn't. That's kind of on them at that point, that there were going to be things that would befall them. They guessed incorrectly. They assessed the situation in a manner that didn't add up to reality, apparently. But I still am against the U.S. participating, but I don't see an option at this point other than to rid ourselves of the regime such that we don't get blowback. Look, I know this is not like the greatest position to take. I just see it as realistic. It's not like I'm saying no war whatsoever, never, ever, ever, because I don't think that aligns with realistically what's going on in the world and what needs to be done. Nor am I a neocon hawk. I'm somewhere in the middle, and definitely towards the anti-war camp. I don't like war. I don't want innocent people to suffer. I want us all to be able to get along, but that's not the reality of humanity. So this is where I stand on the Iran-Israel conflict. I would love it if you guys would leave your comments and your thoughts as to what we should do as a nation, as a world pertaining this. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something from the equation. I've done a lot of research, reading, listening about this, and it's really hard to come up with a definitive solution, but I do trust Donald Trump to make the right decision with the intelligence that the United States has. I just hope that it's not Israel that has forced our hand needlessly into this war. That's what I have to say about that. Peace. And I mean peace for the planet.